Welcome back to another episode of a very British space program. It is the 8th of October 1965 and we're on our way to Mercury. Please join me. So yes, it is the 8th of October 1965. It's actually more than just the 8th, but that's when this sort of section starts. And Messenger 1 is making its second flyby of Mercury. So despite plans to fly close to the South Pole, we got some interesting signals back, shall we say that. The craft was supposed to fly over the South Pole and skim and grab us as much science as it could possibly get. Remember, this is its second flyby now of Mercury, so the plan was for this flyby to happen and then it would hopefully be able to modify its orbit again with the little bit of fuel that it had left and come back around and continue to get some flybys. We don't think there is enough fuel on board the craft so that no matter what flybys we do, we don't think we're actually going to be able to sort of capture around Mercury. We don't have that Delta V on board, but we can hopefully get multiple flybys. So the craft approaches Mercury over the South Pole. It's already got a lot of science from its first flyby, and now we're just trying to basically suck up as much as we can. We've got cameras on board, we've got all sorts of interesting scientific equipment on board trying to get all this beautiful data. This was the first of our messenger craft. It was the stepping stone after the failure of the Hesperus 3. This was the Hesperus 4, renamed to Messenger, and it was the start of a whole series of craft which are going to start hopefully giving us lots of information back. We've already had success around Venus and Mars as well. But this was the first stepping stone out really into the sort of more complex launch profiles, and so this is the success story, and so it's always nice to see this coming around again. It was something we've been really looking forward to. So the idea was it would fly over the South Pole, gather lots of science, and drop it off. And unfortunately, we got a lot of science. But yeah, it seems that a navigation glitch may have come into play, and it's something that I want to talk about in this episode a bit more. So anyway, while we're thinking about that, it is the 12th of October 1965, only 4 days since the Messenger 1 failed to signal back all of its data after passing over the South Pole, and we are launching another Blue Knight 2 booster. This time it is a launch of Tempest 1 Node 2. So this is the second part of our Tempest station that's going to orbit around the Earth, and you can see this thing. It's not about living in it, no, this is all about supplies. We actually have on the top of this Node 2 a little science unit there. It's not actually going to do any science because RP-1 has not configured it, but it's nice to have it. We thought we should really have it. And below that is a nice big storage unit with all the lovely storage of food and oxygen and water and all sorts of things that we would need for living on orbit for an extended period of time. And this thing is full to the gunnels with supplies. That's all it is. It's going to basically be our little supply craft. Now, this is not going to be something like the Russian Progress, which doesn't exist yet, obviously, but it's going to be part of the station. It's going to be a living space in reality. Well, not in reality, but it would be a living space, and so it's going to join up as be one of the core modules to our station. So it does its little burn to change its orbit once it's got into orbit, so that it's going to have a rendezvous, hopefully, with Node 1 of the Tempest station. And then it's just a case of flying through space. You can see it's got a big array of solar panels on the side there. It has enough power generation to really supply it and the other components of the other core component of the station, Node 1. So we do have a lot of redundancy there, which is very nice. And we were actually trying to decide on positioning and so forth of solar panels, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So the craft does have a lot of RCS wastage on it. That's one thing we do notice. We do have a lot of RCS fire, and we're not sure if that's because our RCS is weak or because we just have quite a large craft. This craft is approaching 20 tons. the combined mass of these two is getting big, shall we say. So it's quite a chunky sort of structure. So here we are, we're just going to come past, and this is sped up significantly. I can't remember what speed it's sped up at, but we were on yellow for the actual rendezvous of this, because there is a lot of parts involved, obviously, but even so, we have still sped this up quite significantly to try and get it to move properly. So Node 1 is basically positioned on the normal, as we like to do, just to help our docking, particularly of big craft like this. And of course, this is the largest craft combination ever to be put into orbit. The Russians and Americans do have large rocket launch rocket capability, but they have yet to put anything quite this big into orbit. So this is going to be, we believe, the largest on-orbit craft ever assembled, which would be very nice, wouldn't it? We're ahead of them significantly. We do have concerns about our launch capability, because we know that the Americans have a craft in development that will surpass us. The Saturn V will surpass our launch capability, and we believe the Russians have something with a letter number combination. It's like, we don't know what we're going to call it. It looks a bit like a Christmas tree from what I've seen, and that is supposed to also beat our current launch capability. So we are developing something at the moment that is it's a game changer. That's all we're going to say. It's going to change the landscape quite considerably, but it is going to take us some time to get that going. Anyway, while I've been prattling on, we have our two craft coming towards each other, and you can see this is one of the slowest dockings that I have ever done, and it's actually probably quite realistic, actually. The craft coming together high above the Earth, obviously. I think that's Europe below us, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. Probably Europe. Probably. Could be. I don't know. It's probably Africa or Asia. I don't know what it is. We have nobody on board to actually tell us at the moment. And we also have very limited vision on board. You can see we've got, I think there's a little view hole on one of the craft, but that's about it. Once we actually put crew on this, there's not much view, actually. We really should fix that, shouldn't we? Maybe another module for that. So we really thrust slowly towards here, and at this point it's about lining up our craft, not just to dock, but also to get those solar panels aligned. We don't want the solar panels to be misaligned to each other, because this core unit is going to be orientated so that ideally those panels are basically facing normal, anti-normal when we're finished, so they can actually rotate about the pivot point and will provide energy whenever the sun is over the horizon. And there we go, docked together. How beautiful. So we have about 35 tons after burning RCS and things like that from both craft. We've got about 35 tons of space harbour on orbit, ready for craft to dock to it, and I'm not sure we're going to dock just yet, though. We're undecided. We're not sure about putting a crew on board and then docking. I know we've done some practices with things like that before, but we are concerned about, if we put another heavy unit on the side of this and there's crew inside, if something breaks, we do risk the crew, and there's a big debate going on about that at the moment. So at the moment this is uncrewed at all. We have no crew on orbit, and now this does have the capability to hold quite a large crew complement, but it is likely to get a bit bigger. We have big plans for this, we think, and it's also going to have a sister, but you can start to guess what the sister's going to be doing. Obviously, it's just for science, nothing else. Just a bit of science around Earth. That's all it's for. Anyway, with that, on to our next launch. And our next launch is over a month later. That's a long time for us to wait. And this is the 17th of November, 1965. We're definitely getting towards the end of 1965 here. Won't be long until 1966. And you know what that means, don't you? The World Cup. Yes, the World Cup. Wonderful. World Cup held in the UK. It'll be wonderful. We'll be able to probably fail at that. Anyway, we are launching another of our Blue Knight craft. However, you'll notice the fairing was very different on this one, and that is because inside it is a new craft. We have made very public the fact that this is a gravitational analysis craft that will be sent to the moon. You can tell it's a gravitational analysis craft by those two large fuel tanks in the middle, which are entirely designed to measure gravitational pull on liquids in 0G, which doesn't make sense. Yes, we're sending this craft to the moon, just because we haven't got much science going on around the moon. That's all we're telling the international community. That's all they need to know. That's all the truth. It's the truth and nothing else but the truth. definitely not a docking target. It looks like a docking port on the top of it when you get a look, but it's not. It's just we had some bits left over that really we needed to cap it off, and that just looked perfect for us. So that's what we did with it. We just said that, and it's a really good scientific base for us. You can't see any scientific instruments because they're obviously built inside the craft that you can't see inside there. So this is using some of our most up-to-date row engines. These are the most advanced ones we have, the most advanced engines we have available, in fact. And they have now increased their ignition potential. However, they are still as dangerous to ignite as they previously were. So we have to be careful with that. So this craft is going to send itself to the moon. We do not have like a second stage pushing it up at all. It is purely going to send itself off to the moon. And as it departs Earth, I can tell you the secret. The secret is this is not a science craft. We're going to tell the Americans, the Russians it is, because you know what, they haven't thought about this yet, I'm sure. I mean, I know the Americans are talking all about going to the moon and all that sort of stuff, but you know what, they've been third place all the way along. It's not like they're going to win, is it? So this thing is going to the moon, and it's going to be a docking target because we are going to dock to it with one of our Faraday 3s. Now, in actual fact, we have to dock to it with one of our Faraday 3s, primarily because if we go into orbit around the moon, we do not have the Delta V on our Faraday 3 to get home again. So this is our way of dealing with it. We do not have the launch capability, and there we go, we just the craft's just putting itself onto a path to the moon. You can see there it's going to go into orbit. We're going to put a nice low periaps, is what we're hoping for, and this thing's going to move its way along there, and so off it goes into the distance. And of course, as I said, the Faraday 3 will come and dock to this, that's the idea, and it will actually use the fuel from this craft to top itself up and send itself all the way off back to Earth. And that's the plan, because we do not have the launch capability to actually send a Faraday 3 with enough fuel to go to the moon, go into orbit and come back. We would always be, shall we say, tight on margins. We could enter orbit, but we couldn't enter a tight orbit, and we want to enter a nice tight orbit, and for no reason other than just we want to get a nice good look at the moon. There's no other reason we want to be near it. We could orbit high otherwise, but we just want to have a good look at it. And so this craft will just fly off through the space there. Now, this is where we jump back to the reality of the series. The series at the moment, this episode took me about 4 weeks to film, primarily because the first 2 parts of it have been filmed 3 or 4 times. And I'll tell you why in a second. This craft now is just our new orbiter around the moon is just going to pull itself into orbit. It's going to fire its row engines. It's spent 3 or 4 days just traveling to the moon, and now it's just going to put itself into orbit, which is very nice. So yeah, we I've been having trouble with orbital consistency, shall we say. The reason that our Mercury mission crashed is because Time Warp decided to drop its periaps by a significant number, and I didn't notice it. Now, I did have a save from before that actual flight, because I save every now and again before the start of an episode, but I didn't want to go back and retcon it or anything like that, because I think it adds a little bit to, you know what, we made an error, we didn't actually keep in mind what was going on. However, the space station, that actually decided to change its orbit 3 or 4 times when speeding up, and then also decided to fold itself in half and explode. So I did redo that one, which it breaks my rule of not redoing, but I think that's a crack in the space station. Did I say space station? I meant Space Harbour. Yeah, the Space Harbour did fold itself in half and then explode. We did have a solar panel survive, which was nice, but yeah. So it's been a problematic. I think this program will not be going to Mars, but we will be going to the moon. And as we say that, our little moon orbiter there has just put itself into an equatorial orbit. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, if I'm honest, because we don't know what orbit the Faraday 3 is going to come in on, and I've just wasted some fuel there. So it would be good to know in comments, actually. I did that burn, and it's actually brought the descending node on the far side there, so it might have helped. It might have helped in the long run, but it's very variable. Maybe in the future I should actually wait until I know the orbit of the Faraday 3 and then match it. We will see. So with that, with our little craft there sitting beautifully orientated in the normal beside the moon, next episode I think we're going to try and orbit the moon. with some crew. So, until then,